Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. You'll notice I'm on a different background today, courtesy of the tech problems that plague the joys of going live. I finally feel so much more compassion for live journalists than I ever did in the past. How they managed to get it right 9 times out of 10 when all I could do was criticize the one time they got it wrong. Anyway, Michael and Hala, thank you so much for joining me. I will let Mike you do the intros, but as everyone knows, this is our Wednesday segment with the ability for you all to ask questions around any legal issues you have. Some of those may be able to answer directly. Some of them might need more detail. We can come back to those either as a follow-up or in a different format. But more often than not, we just end up talking about amazing mindset and motivation and give you a different window of the world. So with that, Mike, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Peter. And again, thank you for hosting this and making this a reality. So hello, folks. Michael Smikun here for Hack Mankind, your relentless guardian, helping you to shape and influence results. And I am joined today as a co-panelist. I am honored to have my partner, Hala, who's going to be joining us. And Hala is an absolute powerhouse in advocating for patient rights, individuals who are injured in automobile accidents and other personal injury matters. She has helped a tremendous amount of people and has one of the most positive Google approval ratings of any attorney I've ever run into. Not a single rating below 5 stars, and everybody has amazing things to say about her. So I just want to say, Hala, thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that very generous and kind intro. I am so happy to be here with you and Peter. Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Hala. So Hala, can you introduce us? Who are you, and why should people listen to you in the space in which you are an absolute powerhouse, to say the least?
Well, thank you for that. I am normally one would start by identifying their profession and saying, I am whatever, an architect, an engineer, and normally I would say, I am a personal injury attorney. However, I really don't like to present myself that way because I'm a lot more than that. I think of myself as somebody who is a fighter for the underdog and for people's rights. The way that I do that is through my profession of representing people who are injured due to other people's negligence, whether it be an auto accident, a fall down, a products liability case, whatever the situation may be. And often when you're representing injured people, obviously they are in a vulnerable and compromised position, and you're really going up and against huge insurance companies, gladiators, and I am a voice for those people who don't have a voice. I am a fighter for the underdog. I've been doing this for well over 25 years, and it boils down to just I am passionate about what I do. And you mentioned Google reviews. And that is because when I work, it's all from the heart, because my client comes first, whatever it takes. It's that urgency. I care about them and I care about the results that I get for them. And so when you are operating this way, it's not a job, but it is a passion, and I'm doing something that will affect their life. And when you are looking through that prism, I can't see any other way than being urgent and caring and aggressive in making them whole and in fighting for them.
So, Hala, let me ask you this question. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'll be honest, your caring comes through in your energy and your passion. What led you here, right? So did you make a decision early on that you were going to be an advocate for, injured victims' rights? Did you, was it something that happened inside your life? Like, what was it that led you here?
I would say that, no, I didn't know early on that I am going to necessarily be doing personal injury. However, I did know early on that I wanted to be an attorney and I wanted to fight for the underdog. I think we all had those ideologies at some point or another. You want to save the world, you want to save humanity. And I always viewed looking at, being an attorney as somebody who is on the right side of things and fighting for justice. So that was always a thought. And I think that stemmed from my background. My family came to this country and they were immigrants and they had their own struggles. And I was an immigrant too. I came at a very young age, but we came here and I remember, not speaking the language. I remember, my parents struggling to provide for 10 kids in a new land, in a new environment. And I think that set the tone for, I want to help. I want to be a voice for the vulnerable. And so it started that way. I ended up going to law school, obviously. And after graduating from law school, I clerked for a presiding criminal judge, and that was enjoyable. And then things led me to work for a small personal injury firm. And quickly, in dealing with the clients, I knew that is something that I wanted to do. And when you're representing an individual, especially an individual who is hurt, who's been wronged, who's been compromised, who's vulnerable, I was able to satisfy my need. And I consider it a privilege to be able to represent those people, because my need in wanting to go to law school and serve humanity, that I was able to do it through representing the injured and the wrong. And I love the human touch and the human interaction and being able to interact with my clients on a daily basis, as opposed to representing, a corporation or whatnot. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Everybody needs representation, but my own personal passion about helping someone and seeing almost immediate results. And, it sounds cliche, Michael, but this is really and truly how I feel. There is no greater satisfaction than hearing that appreciation or thank you or that smile on the client's face. To me, that is worth millions. And I mean that deeply. It is not a cliche. I'm not saying it because it just sounds good. That is really what drives me.
Yeah. And thank you. And I appreciate that. And I think, in this time, with all this craziness and people being locked indoors, there is this minority of people that are still out there, that are still traveling, that are still, potentially getting involved in accidents, that are still working, and are still sustaining injuries at this time. There's a lot of talk about infection and virus and all that other fun stuff. But one of the consistent things that is happening still is that people are getting injured in other ways, right? And so, when someone does ultimately get involved in, whether it's an auto accident, or they, fall at work, or they get hurt somehow, there's a lot of uncertainty in that. All they know is, don't I have insurance for this? Am I not covered? What do I do? And so what are the types of things that you found in your experience are the most common areas of uncertainty when people approach you?
Thank you for that question, because that's really an important question, because a lot of times when people are hurt, whether, like you said, whether it's an auto accident or injured at work or falling down somewhere, whatever the scenario may be, in addition to having the physical pain and anguish, right? There is, it's very, very overwhelming about, oh my God, who's going to pay my medical bills? How am I going to be able to function? How am I going to be able to go to work? Do I have to miss work? Who's going to repair my car? Who's going to do this, that, and the other? So it is so overwhelming for somebody to be in that situation. And so what is important, and if I can be of service to people, the important thing to note is that most personal injury cases, right? They're all of them generally. Attorneys work on contingency, which means that it's not an hourly rate. Typically, the attorney gets paid only if the attorney obtains a result, a monetary result, and then they would get a fee, a percentage. So number one, to alleviate that stress, I urge anybody who's in that situation, contact an attorney and get that free consultation. My consultations are free. Most attorneys are in these kinds of situations. Important to remember that first and foremost is the treatment. Because there's nothing more important than health, right? And you want to get better. But in addition, in order to prove the claim, treatment becomes important. When the other side, when the person, the entity, the company, the other driver that you're suing, the first thing in evaluating the claim that they look at is obviously the injury, but also the treatment. What is the type of treatment that you received? So I would advise people, first and foremost, your health is most important. Get yourself to a doctor, get the treatment that you need. Typically, every scenario is different, but typically in automobile accident cases, you do have your own car insurance that provides for medical coverage under PIP, personal injury protection coverage. So if you have, you have personal injury protection, which should cover your medical bills for treatment. So get that stress out of your head. And a lot of people get a little bit curious about that and say, wait a minute, why is it that, I had an accident that was not my fault? And why is my insurance company paying for my medical bills? And the answer to the question is, because it's the law, and because the law wants people to be protected. Because what if you were injured by someone who wasn't insured? Then at least you have insurance. In addition, don't worry about that, because if the accident is not your fault, then your own insurance company will deal with that, and they will go after the person, the tortfeasor, the person responsible, and collect whatever money they paid. So I can't urge enough that, do not compromise your treatment, get to the doctor, seek the treatment. Now, interesting factor here, I don't know if I should go on or...
Well, you opened the door on a couple of things that I think are not the types of items that are usually discussed, and how both you and I have seen it from different sides, where someone is injured, they need treatment, they seek treatment, they sustain substantial, potentially life-threatening injuries, and they come in and they bring you their insurance policy, and you see other people's insurance policies, and there is a reflexive, like, oh, like, why did they do this, in terms of their insurance decisions and how they have exposed themselves and potentially others to harm that goes beyond the coverage that they have available. So would you mind sharing a little bit, as a driver in this universe that can make your own coverage decisions?
Yes.
What types of horror stories have you seen about the types of decisions people make to save a couple of bucks, in the long term? And I'm not minimizing the cost savings, but what types of horror stories have you seen in coverage decisions that people have made for themselves?
Yeah. Again, really, I'm so glad that you're bringing this up, because obviously, and if I may just give like a quick overview of what you're buying when you buy insurance. So when you, obviously in New Jersey, right, car insurance is mandatory. If you own a car, you have to have it insured. Otherwise, you are not abiding by law, and you should have insurance. So when you go to purchase insurance, you buy many things, right? You buy liability insurance. What liability insurance is, it protects you if you have an accident and you are liable for the accident, you get sued. So you have coverage for that. So in the event that you're sued, your insurance company would defend you against the lawsuit, and whatever limits you opted for, that's what's available for the other party.
Mhm.
You also have what's called UM/UIM coverage. That's what you purchase. UM/UIM meaning uninsured motorist coverage or underinsured motorist coverage, which is coverage that you purchase in the event that you're in an accident, you get hurt, and the other side that struck you does not have insurance, or they have a limited policy of insurance. It could be as little as 15,000. That would protect you to get additional coverage under UM/UIM from your own policy.
So full stop, right? Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
Ring, ring. I
Yeah.
just called Geico. I just called State Farm. I just called Allstate. And I say, hey, I'm looking for a policy of insurance. The two things that you've pointed out, your liability insurance and your UM/UIM coverage, are those decisions that you, as the consumer, get to choose how much of coverage you want.
Absolutely, but here's the caveat. You get, and you should, and you also get to choose in New Jersey whether you want to be subject to the verbal threshold versus the zero threshold, which is a very important decision, right? Unfortunately, though, Michael, there is, and I don't want to, let me put it this way. If smaller policies are sold, right, you would think that the insurance companies, it would be in their best interest to sell larger policies because the premiums would be higher, right? However, the reality is not so, because if the insurance companies are selling these minimal policies, eventually they're paying out less. So unfortunately, you know, some insurance agents and whatever, they're sort of promoting those minimal policies. And sometimes, unfortunately, the clients do not even actually understand what they're purchasing, because
Right.
the way they're making the decision is they're sitting down with somebody, an agent, who's saying, oh, you can get this great policy. And, you know, it's like, it costs, you know, a fraction of what you would pay. That's all you need. That's all you need. And they buy it. Now, there are other, you know, interests and lobbying around pushing those policies for reasons. So that's why it's important for the consumer to educate themselves. That
So let's go slow. And there's a question already pending on this issue. Like, this is super confusing. I heard you say PIP. I heard you say verbal threshold. I heard you say, you know, bodily. I heard you say UM and UIM. Super confusing. So let's do this. This is a fun thing that I just came up with. Hala, you are the most integrity-filled insurance agent who has ever existed on the planet Earth, and I am a confused consumer. So I have called you up and I said, Hala, thank God I found you, because I'm super confused about my insurance decisions. So you just told me about a policy of insurance. You quoted me a premium. You told me that I have the following coverages, but I don't even know what that means. So can you, like, how much liability insurance do I want? Like, I just heard you say $300,000. That feels like a lot of money to me, right? Like, isn't that enough to cover somebody's injuries? Like, why do I need to pay for more? Walk me through this, Hala. I'm so confused. Like, how much liability insurance do I want?
Right. So let's break it down, right? So let's break it down. So we said liability, and liability is supposed to protect you in the event you're sued. So now I can't say to you, and usually it runs like this when you talk about liability. It'll be, for example, 15/30. What does that mean? That means that if you are involved in an accident, the accident is your fault, and you get sued, and let's say the other vehicle, there's 2 or 3 or 10 people in that other vehicle, one individual can get 15, but combined, even if there's 10 individuals, they're going to have to split the 30. So that's what 15/30 means, or 25/50, or 100/300, or 250/500, right? Okay. Usually the UM and the UIM coverages, that's in the event, again, if anybody's listening, if you're injured and the other side doesn't have enough and you go to your own, usually they match whatever liability, you have the equal amount in UM, UIM, right? And then the other thing that you're buying is PIP. And PIP is for your own medical treatment, personal injury protection. And there are various limits. Now, good question. How much liability should I get, right? So let me say this. I can't tell you, you know what, Michael, you should get, 250, 500. That is going to be a decision you're going to have to make. However, if I was an insurance agent and I explained to you that what you're buying, this liability, Michael, that you need, let's say one day you ran a red light and you, God forbid, severely, devastatingly injured somebody else and they sue you. Let's say the person loses a limb, God forbid, or whatever. You want them to be able to have enough coverage. That's going to depend on you, how much you can afford, and also what assets do you have? What exposure do you have? I always like to say, and again, I'm not putting, it's not legal advice, and I say minimum, the average person should have minimum 100/300. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of times I see these limited policies of 15/30 or 25/50. Now, if you can afford it, get more. But really, those minimum basic policies are the problem. There were policies that they were called the dollar a day policies, where literally the insurance costs you $365, but that didn't even provide liability coverage for the other side.
So let me ask you a question, Hala. I accidentally blew that red light. I was looking down. I wasn't paying attention. The sun was in my eye, whatever it was, and I injured this person. My policy of insurance that I have right now offers $25.50. What happens after that coverage is exhausted?
Wow.
So my insurance company says, okay, $50,000, here you go. What happens to me then at that point?
They can, if the plaintiff's attorney or the plaintiff, they will do an assets check on you. And if you have assets, they can go after you personally.
So wait, so I got involved in an automobile accident. I had insurance coverage, but I didn't have enough of it. And so now they can take, my personal property. They can put a lien on my house. They can sue me for the entirety of the damages that this person sustained.
That is absolutely. If you have those assets. Now, I don't want to, scare people out there. Typically, it doesn't happen because usually if people have a $15,000 limit, 15/30, they usually don't have the assets that you can go after, and before we go that route, we look to your own or the injured person's own policy under UM, UIM, but definitely there is that exposure. But it depends, again, on who you are. Oh, Michael Smikun, okay, he's a partner at Callagy. Oh, he's an attorney. He may have something to go after, right? So you see where this is going. So the best advice is I can give people for your own protection, like I said, because usually liability limits match UIM limits. Those nonsense limited policies, you got to be careful with. You don't want that, And in addition, the PIP, you want to be able to treat. There's some PIP policies that only provided for catastrophic injury cases that they would only pay if you were really injured for the emergency room. I mean, that is a disaster. Can you imagine? So it's important.
Hala telling it like it is. You were a little reserved in the beginning, but now you're telling it like it is. But walk me through it, Hala. If I have $50,000 of PIP coverage or $250,000 of PIP coverage, that sounds like a lot of money, right? Like, can't can't that cover the extent of my injuries for the most part? Like $250,000 sounds like a lot of money. Walk me through. I got involved in an automobile accident. And as a result of that, I now have radiating pain going down both of my legs that never existed before. I broke my hand, my kneecap, and my ankle because I slammed forward when I rear-ended the car behind me. $250,000 sounds like a lot of money, right? Like, shouldn't that cover my injuries?
Well, $250,000 is a lot of money. However, let's paint this picture, Michael. Let's just say you got involved in the accident, God forbid, and you sustained, like you said, a few fractures and other issues, and you ended up going to the emergency room, but not just for a few hours. You were admitted for 2 or 3 days. What is that bill going to be? Right there. We all know that healthcare can get super expensive, but now you have back pain, the pain is radiating into your legs feel numb and tingling, right? And you start to go for treatment. You go to get some physical therapy, maybe you see a chiropractor, maybe you go to a spinal orthopedic. What if it turns out, Michael, 6 months or a year down the line, that you actually need surgery on your back because you sustained a herniated disc at L4, L5, and L5S1, and maybe you need a discectomy or a laminectomy or a fusion? How much do you think that will cost?
I don't know. You tell me. I've never even heard of those things before.
A lot of money, you know.
Is it fair to say that a one level discectomy can cost the person in excess of $75,000?
Probably. I'm not going to put out there the exact dollar amounts because I really, don't know the answer to the question, but I do know, and I think you do know, and most people listening to us do know, that the minute you're talking surgery and extensive stays in hospitals, the bills are piling up pretty rapidly.
Yeah. Why don't we go through it? Why don't we go through it? Because, you said you don't want to scare people. That's not my intent. My intent is to make sure that people are informed of what these injuries actually look like. Your emergency room stay, even if it's for a couple of hours, is a couple of $1,000s minimum. Yes. But if your injuries are significant and you do require surgery, guess what? You're being admitted to the hospital for multiple days. We're now talking in the tens of thousands of dollars, right? Surgery, right? You're talking about an anesthesiologist, time in the operating room, a surgeon, multiple other doctors who are doing consults to make sure. You're talking radiology, right? X-rays, MRIs, potentially other types of scans, which can cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. So if you're significantly injured in an automobile accident, by the time you walk out of the hospital, you're looking at potentially $50,000, $100,000 to $150,000 of your PIP coverage being gobbled up. Hala, have you seen policies that limit PIP coverage to $50,000 in the state of New Jersey?
Yes. There's some basic, which, like I said, they were policies that only allowed for ER treatment. But also, Michael, even if you don't have extensive hospital stays, even if you have injuries that pertain to your neck, your back, shoulder, knees, whatnot, a lot of times, the way to treat these injuries requires physical therapy. Physical therapy is typically an ongoing treatment 2 or 3 times a week, sessions that can go on for however long you need them. It could be 6 months, it could be a year, it could be 2 years. Now, imagine getting this physical therapy 3, 4 times a week for an extended period of time. You can see where the bills will be going. And I'll give you an example. Obviously, it's not revealing attorney-client privilege because there's no names given. Right now, I have a case, and I'll tell you exactly what the injuries are. I have my client sustained a herniated disc in her lumbar, one level, and a torn meniscus in her knee. Those were the injuries. The torn meniscus required arthroscopic surgery, okay? The back injury, she got some physical therapy. There were no injections, because sometimes clients get epidural injections, but some physical therapy, no injections. And then she had her knee surgery, which was a 1-day stay. With that combined, and because we were aware that this was a fall down accident, so she did not have, unfortunately, any health insurance, and the med pay from the defendant was like $5,000. So we were very conscious and aware of not to go overboard with the treatment, if you will. Not that we would ever just go overboard, but conscious that, okay, the bills are piling up. And with that, her medical bills right now are $62,000.
Wow.
And she was, she needed to get physical therapy 3 times a week. She was only getting it once a week because of that. She needed to get epidurals. She did not, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives you an idea that medical bills can pile. Don't forget, MRIs. To diagnose a herniation or a neck or back injury or a knee injury, the way to do it is by having an MRI done. An MRI alone is somewhere between $1,800 to $2,000 for just one MRI. Now imagine if you're getting 4 or 5 MRIs. So it is very important to have adequate PIP coverage. And again, that is something, in my opinion, forget the case, forget the claim. To me, this is your health. This is your health. This is something that you don't want to skip on. So for a few extra bucks, this is not the place to save. Err on the side of more coverage than less coverage.
Amazing.
Question from me, if you don't mind. Sorry, I've been listening to this fascinated, because obviously the UK, with having a public health system, is so different. I mean, we don't none of this kind of. So I'm like, hang on a second. Hala, I don't know if you're going to be willing to answer this question, or if you can answer this question, and I will accept a no comment, right? But do you think that agents should be legally allowed to sell an insurance product that clearly doesn't offer a level of care that would cover them in an automobile accident? I mean, you don't walk out of an automobile and go, "I've broken my little finger." That very rarely happens. You have an automobile accident; it's normally pretty intense. It seems like there should be at least an agent should be at least have to say, if you take this, you need to be aware that you are putting yourself in that position. It sounds like at the point of sale, there should be a different approach.
No, I agree. I wouldn't go, so far and say they shouldn't be allowed, but I think that there should be certain protocols that ensure that the potential driver client is well informed. And it is really mind-boggling to me when I'm talking to clients and they have no clue what is going on. And we didn't even get to the issue of the verbal versus nonverbal issue in New Jersey. And if I can just talk to you a little bit about that. So in New Jersey, when you buy automobile insurance, you have a choice. You can either purchase something called the verbal threshold, or you can buy something called the zero threshold or no threshold. Sometimes the terms are interchangeable, meaning some people refer to it as the verbal threshold, some people call it the lawsuit threshold, and the other one, the zero threshold versus the no threshold, So what that is this. If you purchase the verbal threshold, I'm sorry, let's start with the other one, the no threshold or zero threshold, because that's easier to explain. If you purchased on your automobile insurance policy the zero threshold, otherwise known as no threshold, that means in the event you're involved in an automobile accident and you're injured, you can sue regardless of what type of injury you have. You scratched your finger, you can sue because you were injured. Now, it's a different analysis whether it's worthwhile to sue and whether that's worth anything and you should sue for that, right? That's a different issue. But there are no threshold requirements for the type of injury. However, if you buy the verbal, otherwise known as the lawsuit threshold, the law says that you are only able to sue if you have sustained a permanent injury. Now, what is a permanent injury? The law defines what a permanent injury is, and there are 6 categories of permanent injuries. And real quickly, I'll go through them. Number 1, for example, God forbid, is death. You can't get more permanent than that. 2 is dismemberment, losing a body part. 3 is sustaining a displaced fracture. 4 is if you're a woman, were pregnant and lost a baby. 5, if you have sustained significant disfigurement or scarring. And 6 is an injury is considered permanent if it has not healed and will not heal to function normally with further medical treatment. Now, most people fall in category number 6. Here's the interesting part. When clients come to see me, this is like important to understand for somebody who's purchasing insurance. They have no clue about verbal versus zero. And 98% of the time, or 99% of the time, they have the verbal threshold. And because when they go to buy their insurance, they've never even heard of the terms. And they might be told something to this effect. Now, granted, the zero threshold is more expensive, but they're told, oh, you don't need that. That's very expensive. This will protect you because if you really hurt, then you could sue under this. Yes, you can still sue, and most of the cases that I have in my office are verbal threshold, but it is a higher standard to meet, and even that, the public is not aware of that, and they are not offered an explanation. And guess what? In the law, if you did not actively say, wait a minute, I want the zero threshold, you are assumed to have selected the verbal and you are bound to it, even if you didn't know.
It goes deeper, Peter, but for the purpose of the conversation today, I think we should keep it surface. I can tell by your face that you are not at all amused by the way the insurance companies have successfully lobbied for the law to be changed and written. But as attorneys and advocates like Hala, we have to work within the confines as much as possible to make sure that the courts are interpreting the law in a way that's most favorable for the injured parties and not the insurance companies, and to also push and advocate for changes in law that make it much more fair for patients and plaintiffs who are harmed in personal injury cases.
And absolutely, just to clarify, none of my disgust is at Hala or the law at all.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
My disgust is 2 areas. First of all, every industry invents its own glossary so they can charge people more. And I don't mind if you and I are having a conversation about digital marketing, me saying, look, we're going to put us in lookalike cohorts so that we can maximize spread from 1.1 to 1.2 to reach look at similar audiences so that we can engage. I don't mind that at all, right? Because that's business and that's fine. But when you're talking to people, the fact that Hala's swapping between phraseology means that there is multiple phraseology. So even in the case of zero threshold or verbal threshold, there is multiple terms even for the confusing thing.
Yeah.
The only problem I have, and I'm just I shouldn't do this, and I apologize, and I know that most of my audience is in America, but the thing I hate the most, America, and this is euphemisms, and use the word lobbied. And I would just like to remove that word from the English language and replace it with the word bought.
Yeah.
Right? The insurance agencies bought a law that allowed this to happen. They bought it. That's what happened. It's the ultimate extreme of capitalism when laws are formed by the interest of capitalist companies, and it's where everything starts to go wrong.
Yes.
And with that, before I get on a total soapbox, I will hand it back to you.
And I will tell you that on behalf of myself and Hala, we don't disagree. So, you know, I know it's 11:45. I don't know how we got lost in conversation. I actually do know, because Hala is super engaging. You know, obviously, Hala, there's a lot to be discussed here. I'd love to have you back. You know, but what do you think, you know, before we wrap up today, what do you think is the most important thing that, you know, plaintiffs or potential plaintiffs or people who are injured in personal injury cases, what do you think is the single most important thing that you think that they can do to best put themselves in a position to land on their feet after, you know, the injury occurs?
Call me. I'm joking. I couldn't resist.
Too fun.
But seriously, that what they could do to land on their feet. Number one, you need to document your injuries. So you're involved in a car accident. Most people, or any kind of accident, most people sort of just, you have that momentary of, oh my God, I don't want this to like delay me and this and that. And even though they might be in pain, they might skip going to the emergency room or skip going to the doctor or wait. And what happens is these little steps later on, that's what the insurance companies use to negotiate against you and claim that you're not injured. So they'll say, oh, you know, let's say the person, you know, their knee ended up there, have torn meniscus in their knee. Well, we don't really buy it, because if that were the case, they would have gone to the emergency room right after the accident. Meanwhile, you know that your client did not go to the emergency room right after the accident because partly in their head, I know what's going to happen in the emergency room. What are they going to do for me? I'm going to go there, I'm going to sit for a few hours, and then they're going to say, see your own doctor, for example. Or because they were hoping that the pain would go away and they thought it wasn't, you know, it was not something significant. They went home, they rested, they iced it, they whatever they did, and when it didn't go away, a few days later they went to the doctor, et cetera, et cetera. Or they got, but these are all things that the insurance companies use against you. So document your injuries. You know, sometimes people walk away without filing a police report. File a police report, call the police, file a police report. Do not make any, you know, statements or get in any kind of confrontation with the other driver. Document, go to the doctor, and seriously, do yourself a favor. Call an attorney, whether it's me or somebody else, but the consultation, like I said, in 99% of the time, personal injury claims, consultation is free. Know your rights, educate yourself. Know your rights. And I'm sure the insurance companies are not going to like this. Whatever you do, don't talk to the other side, the other insurance company who's going to call you for a statement. Do not talk to them and give a recorded statement without at least first talking to an attorney. Very important.
Amazing.
I mean,
thank you.
List, you know.
Amazing advice. So, Hala, I want to give you the last word before we sign off, but I want to give Peter the pre-final word, or the final word, and I'm going to give you final.
The final post-finish.
Yes.
So everyone that's watched this, thank you for joining us. Hack Mankind is all about dispelling fear and misinformation, and in the realm of misinformation, I think this one qualifies. But I also, as much as I got a little bit indignant and wanted to say that companies get to buy stuff, I also want to mimic Hala and say, at the end of the day, and this, I'm enjoying calling this the great realization. I like that phrase for this period of time. In this great realization, if there's anything you need to understand, and I'm in a real kind of space today, so I apologize. But there's
Punchy.
anything to understand is you have to take responsibility for your own life. Right? If you drink Tropicana apple juice, you are happy that you're drinking apple juice from 12 countries. You are happy that fish are dying in the seas for that apple juice to arrive on your shores. You are happy that people are locked in economic slavery so you can save 4 cents on the dollar. And if you are happy with that, I actually don't mind. I just want you to be conscious and sentient and aware that that is what this is. And the law is the ultimate example of that. Right? Yes, it can be hard to find the answers. Yes, it can require, but I would say it's not. You just literally talk to an attorney and ask the questions. But it is on you to ask those questions, and it's on you to take that forward. So with that, apply that to the rest of your world and join hackmankind.com, because we've got some changes coming up in the next couple of weeks, which are going to be fun and exciting. And you might not be able to get access after that. I don't know. So www.hackmankind.com, blue box, top right, fill it in with your email address. It's as simple as that. And we haven't said this for a while on a few of our calls. We keep missing it. Doctors, nurses, EMTs, teachers, police officers and firefighters, thank you for doing things that I necessarily wouldn't be willing to do for me, for my family and my community. And with that, I will hand it back. Thank you.
Amazing. Hala, final words?
Thank you. Of course, I honor and salute all of the first responders and doctors and nurses and grocery store workers as usual. I want to thank you, Michael and Peter, for this amazing, amazing platform. I love this platform, Hack Mankind, to dispel fears and to educate the public. It's so important. And I think this is in service of people. Michael, I want to thank you for the amazing questions, because, you know, Michael is my partner, but he also has a way of really focusing in and zeroing on the heart of the issue. And that comes from also he being a great litigation gladiator and just relentless guardian. So thank you for providing this platform. I enjoyed it. I would love to come back and see you. You said if I would come back. This is amazing, because this is really in service of everybody out there. The more knowledge you have, the more you educate yourself, the more informed you are, the better protected you will be. And I honor you and Peter for providing this platform. And thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Hala. So thank you, Hala, for everything that you shared. Again, thank you, Peter, and Hack Mankind. You know, we are here to answer any questions that you may have. You can contact us through Facebook. You can contact us through our respective pages. And at the bottom of this video, we'll post some contact information for Hala in case you guys have any follow-up questions or anything along those lines.
Yes, Hala Jaloudi, Calagi Law. The number is 201-565-2344. You know it.
One more time?
That was
I missed it.
201-565-2344. Hala Jaloudi with Calagi Law. Thanks.
Beautiful. And I am Michael Smikun from Calagi Law on behalf of Hack Mankind, your relentless guardian, helping you to shape and influence results. Thank you, folks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.